So I'd like to start in the beginning, the heydays for you, reflecting on the early days of your musical journey. Could you share with us what it was like when you first started your career, and could you pinpoint a defining moment that made you consider, that was like a pivotal turning point in your evolution as an artist?
Yeah, of course. Well, for me, I'm a very young artist still. I'm only 23, so I hope there's good stuff still to come. But for me, it started really through my dad. My dad ran a very small jazz radio station in my parents' home country of Barbados in the Caribbean. And he interviewed all kinds of people. I think he interviewed Branford Marsalis, amongst other people, because Barbados used to have a great jazz festival. And out of that, he collected loads and loads of CDs. So when I was born in the year 2000, the family moved to London, and he retained all of his CDs. So growing up, I was exposed to pretty much everybody, from Duke Ellington straight through to the Yellow Jackets, so a real vast...
You could start early digging through your dad's collection.
Second?
You started really early digging through your dad's collection. That must be a real privilege.
Absolutely, and I showed interest to take music lessons, but I actually wanted to really take saxophone lessons. I didn't want to take piano lessons because my thinking was, there's loads of pianists. There's so many pianists, not only jazz but all kinds of pianists.
The competition.
Yes, exactly. But my feeling at the time was that there's not a lot of saxophonists, especially in London. So I really wanted to learn saxophone. So I told my dad, I've been listening to all these CDs, and what really kind of draws me is the saxophone. Is it possible that I could take some saxophone lessons? So he went to the school, to my elementary school, and was like, I have my son, he really wants to take saxophone lessons. Would you have a saxophone teacher and a saxophone that he could rent as well? Then the school came back saying, well, no, we have no saxophones. But we do have piano teachers, and your son can take piano. So my dad came back to me and he said, well, they don't have any saxophone teachers, but they do have piano teachers. So why don't you learn piano for the meanwhile, and then maybe when you get older, we can get you into some saxophone lessons. So I said, I was very reluctant, but thought, I could, if this is what it's going to take for me to have saxophone lessons, then why not?
It might just be worth it,
Exactly that.
Put in the work.
Yeah. So I went to the piano lesson. Really didn't want to go. Really did not want to go. But within 5 minutes of the piano lesson, I had no desire to learn saxophone anymore. And
That was quick.
Yeah. And I was sold on the piano and have been sold on the piano ever since. And since
did you ever go back to saxophone?
No,
never.
Never.
Never thought about it.
It never interested me from that point. 5 minutes in, and from there, all the stuff I had been hearing began to make more sense as I kind of developed my musical education and learned a bit more about the musical language and the language of improvisation as well. And I've just been chasing the sound of the people I heard, people like McCoy Tyner, people like Bill Evans, Herbie Hancock, Duke Ellington, Ahmed Jamal. I've been trying to chase that sound ever since.
Interesting. So, as a pianist and composer, how do you approach your creative process? Is there a particular routine or a ritual that you follow to get into the zone?
That's a great question. For me, I know loads of people have their own approaches and their own methodologies, but for me, there isn't a set way to do things. Every composition is conceived of very, very differently. Some compositions come, everything, all the structures are there, all the harmonies, they come to me, and it's just a case of writing it down and presenting it to the band. But then some compositions, I might just get one small fragment or one vamp or one harmony idea, and it takes a long time to flesh it out and to find the other components that work with it to make it into a composition. So it's very nuanced and it's very random for me.
So is this all, in this stage of the process, are you then writing or are you playing and exploring on the piano?
What do you mean?
So when you think of these compositions and the harmonies coming to you, are you just in your head writing it down, or are you at the piano actually playing it and exploring the notes?
It's the latter. It's definitely a thing of, I have an idea and I'm trying to, it's trial and error almost. It's like I'm trying to find what works, what goes with this, and I think every composer knows. They know when they're being sincere. They know when they're developing something that makes sense, but they also know when they're trying to reach for something and it doesn't make any sense. And it's about, not holding on to what's easy and what comes to you, but really being pedantic and exploring what honors the initial idea of the composition.
So it really takes a certain discipline,
Absolutely.
to really push it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned a few names already of jazz pianists that you draw inspiration from, and like you mentioned Herbie Hancock, and these maestros that really influenced your trajectory. Could you tell a little bit more about how that came to be?
Yeah, well, I think the first person who comes to mind and the person people most attribute me for, my playing for, is definitely McCoy Tyner. And that came about really from watching a video on YouTube. Maybe the audience, people listening might know this video, but it's the video of the John Coltrane Quartet playing Afro Blues. So this is John Coltrane on saxophone, Jimmy Garrison on bass, Elvin Jones on drums, and McCoy Tyner on piano. And that I remember watching that video and I was fixated with McCoy, not only his playing, but also his energy and his vibe and his presence and his attitude towards the music and towards accompanying John Coltrane. And so his approach was so original, this whole quartal kind of harmony thing and the way of his very rhythmic kind of approach to comping, and I've been chasing that sound ever since. And through that, I discovered people like Duke Ellington and also Ahmed Jamal, who's, I guess, the opposite, where it's not as condensed. It's very, there's loads of space and time and, room for the music and the harmony to breathe. And then Herbie Hancock, and then newer players like Kenny Kirkland and Chick Corea and Joey Calderazzo and Eddie Palmieri and a whole host of other players. They're all my inspirations, but really the root is, for me, it's always been McCoy, which is very interesting because I guess people usually get into jazz piano maybe through Bill Evans or through Herbie Hancock, or again Duke Ellington, Count Basie, or Dave Brubeck, or some of these people. But for me, it's really McCoy. So I'm very blessed to have found McCoy.
I think it's a great approach to just look somewhere else, instead of the obvious. So I think that gives you something extra.
So culture. Yeah, culture can be, a powerful muse in an artist's life, and in what way has your cultural heritage, infused itself into your compositions and performances? Because the Barbados is rich culture, and I think of a warm culture as well.
Absolutely.
Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Barbados how many times? Maybe 3 times in my entire life. To give a bit of background, both my parents, they have their origins in Barbados. So my dad grew up in Barbados, and my grandfather on my dad's side, he's Bajan. He grew up in Barbados. Then his mum, my grandmom on that side, she's from Barbados. But my mum, she was born in England, London. But both of her parents, my grandparents on that side, they come from Barbados. So I'm very Bajan, very from Barbados. But just visiting the island, it's a very different setting to London. I grew up in London. That's kind of what I know. I know the business, and I know the hustle and the bustle, and the kind of that kind of lifestyle, which is always very kind of eye-opening when I go to a small island like Barbados. And that definitely plays into my music, because I've always thought that a big thing that's not always explored is the link between, or the overlap between Caribbean migrants from Europe, or people that came from the Caribbean islands and settled in Europe.
Right.
We talk a lot about African American people, which is fantastic, but we never really talk about the link and the history that unites Europe, especially in my case London and England, and how that relates to the Caribbean. Right. So that's something I'm very interested in exploring in my music.
Yeah, interesting. And Yeah, we'd like to talk about your latest work. We'd like to talk about your latest work, Faithful One. And that carries a sense of depth and commitment in its title, you know? And yeah, could you dive into the essence of the title and how it encapsulates the spirit of the music within?
Yeah, so the album, I put out the album last year on a great label called Whirlwind Recordings, headed up by Michael Yanish, and it's released in March. We had a fantastic launch at the Jazz Cafe, which was really an amazing time. We did a small run of shows in England. And what I wanted to encapsulate through the record was many things, many different themes. The first theme of, I guess, my love for McCoy Tyner and for the canon of jazz piano, but also this whole aspect of the intersection between gospel music and jazz, which again is something, you know, I'm big on intersections. It's something that's not really explored much. We've seen it a bit, I guess, through work of Duke Ellington again, with like the sacred concerts that he wrote. In more contemporary examples, we see a lot with a great pianist called Cyrus Chestnut, who's another big inspiration of mine. But there is definitely a link, you know, between gospel music and jazz, and it comes across in the album through tracks like, there's a track on the album called Prayer, and the whole idea of that track is to simulate what it feels like to be in a prayer meeting, or to have loads of different people praying about the same thing. So the melody in that tune is always played, and the whole idea of that is that all of the instruments play the melody up front, and they each kind of diverge from the melody ever so slightly. So no one's soloing like how it's conventional in jazz, but it's more so this kind of meditative kind of
repetitive,
exactly,
you know,
polyphony kind of thing, which I'm trying to evoke. And there's other tracks like the title track, Faithful One. Later on in the album, there's also a great hymn I wrote on the album called He Has Made Me Whole, which is me doing my best at honoring the legacy of great hymns, you know, which is something I love. I love playing hymns, like really old hymns. I love that, and that tune is my attempt to kind of get into that state of being of hymns, you know?
I get a very, very spiritual focus when I hear you talking, how that spiritual really elevates, you know, your state of being as an artist, and that's translated via the music.
No, that's important. It's very important, because music is a spiritual art form, you know, like loads of other art forms, but especially jazz in particular. Jazz is a very spiritual art form. It's very deep. It's not, you know, it's not a very surface level thing. It's about, I guess, trying to delve into your innermost being and presenting that to the audience, you know, being honest with the audience and presenting what you really think or feel about something. So that's always something I'm trying to do with my music, and something that I've tried my best to do through the record.
Is this also a way for you to differentiate from other artists? I mean, the London jazz scene is huge. I mean, there's a lot of big players there, and might this be one of many ways how you profile yourself differently than the other artists around?
Definitely. It wasn't something intentional, but I guess it's something that has come about where I guess I'm interested in exploring themes and subjects that aren't necessarily explored in the London jazz scene. But the London jazz scene is really, it's definitely, I feel home in that. Even though it might be different to the stuff I'm creating, I do really feel that this is my home, and this is where my kind of foundations, you know.
And now we're here at Jazzahead.
Mm-hmm.
And Jazzahead is a major event, and how do you prepare for such an event, and how does it differ from other gigs? So in comparison to this showcase, in comparison to other gigs that you might do in London, for example.
Well, this is my first time in Germany as well, much less Bremen. And I hope it won't be my last. I've really had a great time in
We'll just
Germany.
invite you over next year.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you. But showcases are always they're very interesting events, because they're not quite shows. They're not quite like concerts where people, you know, buy tickets and come to see you and stuff. It's a bit of it's similar, but it's a very different thing. So it's a different vibe when you're performing for an audience that's filled, a very informed audience, a very critical audience as well, where it's not just people that are just going because, you know, this is how they want to spend their pastime or their weekend. So we definitely kind of felt that energy. Even yesterday when we played, we kind of felt that energy of, this is a very discerning audience, and they really listen to every single note that we're playing, which is something that, of course, we always love as artists. We like, for our music to be appreciated and to be heard critically. It's important.
Do you go about differently when you play a showcase like here? Do you prepare differently? Do you feel the vibe and then just go with it, or is there actual preparation beforehand because the audience is so different?
That's a great question. If I'm being honest, we didn't really prepare anything different. We've been playing the same or similar tunes for a couple of years now, so we really know the music very well. We don't have any scores when we're playing or anything like that. I mean, even in soundcheck, we kind of just tested the levels. We didn't really rehearse anything, because when we play, it doesn't matter who we're playing with. We like for it to be we're just being honest. We're having a conversation. The same way we're having a conversation, the same way I'm having a conversation with the guys I'm playing with. And irrespective of who's in the audience, we're going to be honest, and we're going to try and make good music, and we're going to try and, give our best to whoever's. It could be 5 people in the audience, it could be 10,000, it could be a room full of people who hate jazz, it could be a room full of people who love jazz. It doesn't matter. We're here to play.
Sounds like even though the environment is different, or the gig is different, or the audience is different, you guys are just going to be you.
Exactly. But it's about being honest. That's what it's about.
That's great.
Collaboration. Yeah, that can be a source of magic and a source of inspiration. And of course, you're Sultan Stevenson. It's your name, but as a musician, you're constantly collaborating with other people.
Absolutely.
Can you recount an experience of working with others that really stands out to you as a particularly transformative event?
That's a great question. For me, there's been loads of great collaborations. Even just playing with, my regular band of Joel Waters on drums and Jacob Grin on bass. We're collaborating all the time. We're always making decisions that are so split-second decisions that you would. Sometimes we're not even aware of decisions that we're making, because we're making so many decisions, per second. That's one collaboration. The biggest collaboration for me, and the most kind of, it was a really real blessing. Last year when I got the opportunity to play with Charles Tolliver. Charles Tolliver, an amazing trumpeter, who, literally was mentored by Jackie McLean, is on loads of Jackie McLean records on his recordings. And, played with Herbie Hancock, it was recorded with Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard was one of his best friends. So the opportunity to play with him last year at the Church of Sound in London was a real, really big kind of thing for me to connect with, again, because he used to play with McCoy Tyner. McCoy Tyner was in his band, so my parts were
that in itself already
must have been a full circle moment.
Exactly,
right there.
Exactly. So I'm in a position where the person who played the same chart as me 30 years ago, whatever, was McCoy Tyner, and I'm now playing his part, and I have to almost assimilate into his role. That's a really big kind of thing. So
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Not even slightly nervous, of course.
Oh, I was very nervous. Very, very nervous. It's always a very different thing when you're playing your music compared to playing other people's music. When you're playing other people's music, there's this certain kind of, there's a higher level of respect and honor for the music that you kind of assimilate. When you're playing your own music, because it's so internal to you, you don't really question it. But when you're playing other people's music, it's a lot more serious. So that seriousness weighed upon me, and I really wanted to do a great job and honor the legacy in which I was fitted into.
How do you feel that worked out?
I thought it was good. I hope he thought it was good. But no, all jokes aside, it was amazing. We had a great time, and it was just a really great experience. Very, again, as you said, very full circle moment for me.
So the music industry is constantly changing.
Absolutely.
And it has changed significantly over the years. And Our question is, how do you navigate these changes, and what do you think is key to staying relevant, but also what do you think is key in staying true to yourself while still navigating those changes, if you know what I mean?
I think for me, I mean, again, I'm very early on in my
Exactly.
career, but from what I've seen and from what I've been taught, you know, I think what's important is to always have a central theme, have a central idea of what your music is trying to represent. That's important. Know what you're about. Know why you write in the way you write. Know what you're trying to say through the compositions. That, and in keeping with that theme, I think is what is important, because obviously stuff can change. If we take a look at, I don't know, Miles Davis. This is someone who at every groundbreaking moment in the development of jazz, he was always there. Similar to Coltrane, at every groundbreaking moment, Coltrane can be found, Miles Davis can be found. With those people, they always knew what they were trying to create. They always knew what they were trying to go for. And it stayed consistent. Even though the contents of the music may be changed, or the framework in which they were working on, or the resources they were drawing from, or the tools they were using were maybe different, but the message and the theme is always consistent. And it can always be heard. So for me, I always try and take inspiration from them. And I think that might be the key to creating a sustainable career in this music. In any art form, is to always know what you're trying to represent and embed that into all of the work, you know?
And now we're here in Jazzahead, and you're attending Jazzahead with clear intentions, I'd say. And what are the goals that you're aiming to achieve with this event, and what makes it a significant milestone for you? I mean, we heard one of the milestones the first time in Germany. That's the first one. And what else are there other things that you're looking forward to?
Well, I mean, firstly, it's a massive privilege to be able to play Jazzahead. You know, this is, I guess, a dream for people all over the world, not just in Europe, for people everywhere. And it's, you know, just even where we are now in the trade fair, there's people from everywhere in the world. There's an African stall just there. There's people from, I saw a Lithuanian stall there. There's obviously the British contingency there. There's a Scottish one. There's people from Athens over there. Japan is just around the corner. There's everywhere. So for me, it's about meeting all these people and trying to spread the message of the record and the message of my music to all of these various people. Because of course, part of the reason why I decided to become a musician is the fact that it's a very sociable kind of career. You know, you're going to meet loads of people, and your music is connecting with these people. So for me, I would love to go to all the places I mentioned, and I hope that through doing this, it might open up the doors to not only becoming a London-based musician, but actually changing the scene and actually becoming a worldwide artist, someone who's known in all of the scenes around the world. That's what I'd love.
Connect, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Sultan, thank you very much for your time and for your great answers. It's been a great conversation.
It's been great listening to your stories.
Oh,
yeah,
very kind.
Delighted.
We do have one last question.
Of course.
What's next? What's next for Sultan Stevenson? And are there any upcoming projects or collaborations that you're particularly excited about and you want to share?
Well, there's a few things. I'm returning to London, I think, tomorrow. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm playing at this very new festival in London called the Brick Lane Jazz Festival, which is a really kind of amazing time. Then after that, I'm going to be at the Cheltenham Jazz Festival, which is another great festival where they have people from all over the world playing there. And you know, apart from that, next year I'm actually putting out another record, which we recorded back last year, which is already an amazing piece of work, which I'm very, very proud of. Very fortunate to have the musicians I have on the record as well. And really, the purpose of that record was to almost be like a sequel to the first record. So it's in keeping with the same kind of themes that the first one has, but kind of developing upon those themes and to look at those themes in a much more deeper kind of way. So I'm very excited to put that out next year and, you know, to be playing it around the world, hopefully, and hopefully make even more music. And I have no struggle with composing new music. It's something I love. I find it comes to me very easily. So I'm excited to see what, I guess, the next compositions are and how the band takes that and where things can develop from there.
Sultan Stevenson, all of the luck in the world to you. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy Jazz Ahead 2024.
Very much
Thanks
looking
so much.
forward to the new work.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you.